Unlike the previous wars between India and Pakistan, where China stepped away, did not intervene in this conflict, a two front war kind of scenario had started emerging.
I have with me two people who know China like the back of their hands. Let me introduce Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, a professor in Chinese studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Atul Aneja, an eminent journalist and a strategic affairs expert. Rajnath Singh, our defense minister himself, pointed out today in a press conference that now it's both India as well as is both China as well as Pakistan, which are provoking at the LAC and the LOC respectively with a mission. Now we know that both Pakistan and China obviously have converged interests. But what could be this mission that Mr. Rajnath Singh is referring to, Mr. Aneja?
The China-Pakistan factor. Now, the Chinese and the Pakistanis have been working together for a very long time. But I would draw your attention to a meeting which took place in October, just before the Chennai summit in Beijing, where the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, the Pakistani Army Chief Bajwa, and Faiz Hamid, the ISI chief, were all brought, in fact, summoned by Xi Jinping, the president of China, in Beijing. And
Right.
my own sources, since I was there at that time, told me that for the first time, the three during these meetings, the Indo-Pacific element was discussed, and there were hints to the effect that unlike the previous wars between India and Pakistan, that is 65, 71, and Kargil war, where China stepped away, did not intervene in this conflict, there were suggestions to the effect that from now onwards, especially because of the US, India, Japan, and Australian equation maturing, this has happened after the foreign ministers meeting in September in the UN General Assembly last year. So a two-front war kind of scenario had started emerging right before the Chennai summit itself. Now you see another level of that emerging right now, which you refer to, where China and Pakistan, to me, two things are very interesting. Apart from the military side of it, there are two things which happened. One is that in a leak to Hindustan Times a few days ago, the Chinese once again proposed the 1959 LAC, which accepts the eastern sector of the McMahon line as a boundary on the eastern sector, but there also has this very expansionist sort of a maximalist claims on the western sector. So that was one thing which came out from the Chinese side, but the equally interesting was what happened from the Pakistani side. I think it was reported in your newspaper that the National Security Advisor of Pakistan made a suggestion of turning the LOC into a soft border or an international border, or hints or signals to that effect. So I think once again, the Chinese and the Pakistanis were working together. Something which started in October last year, a sequel to that is happening now, where the two are coordinating their positions. While the situation remains tense on the border, I think there is something which is happening both jointly by China and Pakistan, which the Indian side should take note of without lowering its guard on the military side. I think it's a very interesting that now we got to see what is happening, not just on LAC, but LAC and LOC together. So our optics on this situation have to change, and we have to, I think, focus more on the combination of China and Pakistan, which is a sort of a interesting and a unique situation which is emerging, not necessarily heading towards conflict, but perhaps an invitation to a back channel contact and exploring while the situation remains tied up and frozen in the border, as we discussed earlier.
Even if Pakistan joins in a two-front war, it is likely because in 2009, the then Indian Army Chief mentioned that they are now prepared for a two-front war under nuclear threshold. Even if this escalates into a nuclear conflict, by the way, so far nobody spoke about nuclear dimension because China and India have mentioned about no first use. So they have not mentioned yet, since Pakistan has a first use doctrine, this is quite possible that we can visualize a nuclear confrontation as well. But the Indian armed forces are prepared, as they explicitly mentioned since 2009, to cater for this contingency as well. So I do not see much takeaways for China or for India